We have Russian planes, and maybe many Canadians aren't aware of this, but the Russian Air Force continually tests our air defense, don't they, by flying planes into and over our airspace in the Arctic. How much of a concern is that for continental security with the United States, and what can Canada do to assert itself better in the Arctic?
Well, it's an ongoing challenge. The manned bomber fleet of the Russian Air Force is continuing to do what they've done for decades, which is to prepare for potential attacks against North America. And that's what they do. They do training runs on a regular basis, and they use the opportunity of those training exercises to test the defenses, to measure the reaction times and detection of North American air defense. Is it concerning in the sense that any of those exercises themselves is dangerous? No, it's concerning because it's a demonstration of their continued intent to prepare for a potential attack across the pole. That's the shortest way from Russia to North America, and we're right on the path. And this is why the modernization of our air defenses and North American defense writ large, because it's not just air defense as it was back in the heyday of the Cold War. It's multidimensional now. This is why this is such an important issue, and it's an issue that it's going to have to be explored aggressively with the new administration in Washington. And it's an issue that Canada is going to have to be prepared to commit to. And it's going to be expensive, very expensive to do this properly.
Well, speaking of expensive, we're part of NATO, as many of our viewers will know. And I believe as such, we have to commit to 2% defense spending of our GDP. How are we doing that? I mean, you're from the Navy branch, if you will. I mean, obviously you are in a very large second in command, basically, of the entire defense nationally. But from your background as a former Navy officer, from what I see, we have an aging naval fleet. We don't have supply ships. When we want to get our Navy out somewhere, we sometimes have to piggyback on other ships. How are our investments as in Canadian forces being spent? Are these being spent properly? And where would you make improvements?
Wow, that would be the topic of several books. In fact, people have written books on those very subjects. But I try to answer this as simply as I can without oversimplifying it. One of the challenges the Canadian Forces has experienced, and it's multi-generational. My father was in the armed forces through the heyday of the Cold War, and my grandfather before him. Is a feast and famine approach to defense spending, and that all too often key fleets, key capabilities are not replaced or modernized until it reaches some sort of crisis, at which point then you're managing multiple crises, and it becomes a difficult decision for any government. And I don't care which stripe of government you're dealing with. They've all had equal challenges, and they've all had equal failures as it relates to the managing of defense. We need to look more strategically. We need to look at this more long term. I'm on record as having said that we need to consider a longer term and bipartisan approach to defense. 90% of what we discuss in the context of Canadian defense is common. What we end up doing is we end up politicizing the 10% that's different, and then we turn those into divisive issues, and they really shouldn't be. What we should be talking about is how we move forward on that 80 to 90%, which is relatively common. Yes, there's going to be different hows. And every government is entitled to and should be entitled to discuss how they want to do something. But the whats and whys don't change, and they haven't changed for my adult life. And I don't imagine them changing.